Well, we got together to watch it. And by it, I mean the end of the season. As Arkansas falls in the Sweet 16 to the Connecticut Huskies by a score of 88-65. This is Arkansas basketball recap. I'm Daniel Price. That's Jacob Price. And this one wasn't ever really close. I mean, obviously at the beginning when it was 0-0 was close, and first 10 minutes were close, but it was rough, and it was a combination of things. UConn. I mean, we could sit here and criticize all kinds of things from Arkansas or whatever, but I think at the end of the day, UConn is better than we are, and that's kind of sometimes what it comes down to is that. Yeah, you're better than we are. And they look like they've been playing a full season of basketball together. I said this, I don't know, at some point during the game, and they were so much more decisive than we were. Like they got the ball and knew what they were going to do with it. There wasn't this sort of searching around, probing. It looked so fluid. It looked like second nature. They didn't look like they were thinking about it, which is the thing that Arkansas never really looked like they got into. Really, I mean, there was like flashes of like transition game that Arkansas would get. They have those games where they turn people over, and they're pretty good in transition. Not tonight. Horrible in transition tonight. But Arkansas's offense never had that thing where it just looked like it was fluid. It was flowing. Everyone knew what to do. It was clicking. You didn't have to think too hard. Everything was decisive, and I know that it's rare to have it like the way that UConn have it. But when you saw a team really doing that, it became like really glaring. Obviously, I just think you could. The contrast was on offense was pretty stark.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is. I mean, they were that's just a better team than us. I mean, they obviously have way less holes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's felt like this a lot this season, where one of the frustrating things is, and we've talked about it ad nauseum, but it's so much easier to defend a team, both through strategy and actual physical effort. It's so much easier to defend a team that can't shoot well.
Yeah.
And it seems like every game we have to put out about 10 to 25% more effort to keep a team, even a good team, like just where they're scoring with us.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's why so many of our games come down to like 2-3 point games. But that's, in my opinion, with us having to play much harder on defense than the other team. Now, there's some teams that just play hard on defense, like Tennessee, and then we get beat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they're just a better team. They had better shooters. They matched us with. They were a team that you sometimes when you have shooters, we have an advantage with size, which we really didn't have. They had talented big men. Their guards weren't small. They were probably a little quicker than we were, almost. I would say, at least on the perimeter.
That decisiveness will, even if you're equally quick, being that decisive with the ball and knowing what you're going to run, that looks like quickness.
Part of that decisiveness too comes down to the shooting. Like our guys, the reason they're not decisive is because when they catch the ball outside the perimeter, which is mostly where they're passing the ball around, an entire option is taken off the table for most of the players, with the exception of Nick Smith. I mean, Nick Smith's really the only guy that's going to catch the ball and probably even has a thought about shooting an off the dribble or even a quick guarded three. Devo's going to shoot if he's open and set, you know what I mean? But all their players were like, when they catch the ball, even when they're moving, they're curling around a screen and they catch the ball, the first thing they're doing is looking, and if their guy is even giving them a little bit of a window, went under the screen, gotten clipped a little bit, didn't make his way through it, they're shooting that.
Yeah,
and if they don't, they just drive. And
they hit some tough threes too. I mean, they hit some threes where you're like that. The guys there, maybe he got screened and stuff, but they shot and made threes that we would have never taken.
Yes, and it's not a fluke either. I mean, if you watch them, those guys they've got very good shooters, and they hit tough, long, guarded shots. They did that in the last game, and they did it in this game. And yeah, I mean, ultimately, this is one of those games where it's disappointing. Not even necessarily, it would have been disappointing to lose no matter what. And really, it's not like you get any style points. But everybody knows, like, there's a way to lose where you don't feel as you felt like you gave yourself the best chance. And this game is disappointing in not just the loss, but that we lost in kind of an ugly fashion. And it was in the fashion that had been our frustration all year, which is a team played off our shooters and we just couldn't. And actually, it was a little bit even atypical as far as like we really got it really looked like we got flustered and kind of went through a couple of those stretches where it's like you kind of don't do anything right. Like you don't rebound properly, you don't box out right. You're like there's just lots of plays where both offensively and defensively it looked like a lot of like turning around and spinning around and not knowing where they were, who they were supposed to have, or I mean sometimes it was like literally like they pass it to a guy that's just wide open standing under the goal.
Dude, some of that's just really well run offense. I mean, some of that's just some of that's just having the same group of guys running the same offense all year round.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, I think you saw that they're a better team position by position as far as they got shooters, they got drivers, they got big men, they got speed.
Not a lot of holes there.
No, not a lot of holes, and they had experience, which I do think we're learning. I mean, we've said this before too, that we have a little bit of what Kentucky and Duke and these teams have had in the past, which is this is some of the frustration that you deal with. And if you pay attention to Kentucky the last 10 years, now they've had some really great teams, but they've had a lot of teams where the talent is like ridiculous and they just lose games because they're young and they don't box out or they don't play defense in the way Calipari wants them to. And I mean, if you've been a Kentucky fan or watched Kentucky basketball, you know that like those fans have been exacerbated by a lot of these young players, a lot of these young, immature, super talented players. And I think we're experiencing a little bit of that. Like, I mean, things are great. You're getting the high recruits, but with these one and done guys, you do end up with guys that are physically weaker at certain times, and there's just nothing you can do about that. Even if you have a great body, when you get down to the most elite of elite, several years, the difference between an 18-year-old and a 21-year-old in development is huge.
Yeah.
And, these guys had some seniors, they had experience, and like, I'm not disparaging any of our players. I thought our guys all played really hard, gave any critique of their youth just has to do with something that no person can change, which is you can't make up for experience. Like, you just don't have experience yet. And now once in a while you get somebody like Shaquille O'Neal who like is just such a sheer freak of nature that he maybe can dominate guys that are more experienced than him because he's just an absolute colossal. But other than those guys, I think when you look at what a baby face Anthony Black is, and then look the level that he even is playing being that young and inexperienced, you can see how talented he is. But it's still, like I said, when you get down to the last 16 teams, I think experience could really help you, and
I think that's right. And by the way, if you're doing player of the game, I think it was Anthony Black. I thought Anthony Black played extremely hard. He finishes. Anthony Black is the only guy you look at it. Council ends up with 17, but Anthony Black has 20 points, 5 steals. Anthony Black was playing hard.
By far the best performance on our team tonight.
Yeah.
It kind of sucked that Devo got in early foul trouble. It felt like by the time he even got back in, the snowball had already started rolling downhill. But, dude, and I credit them for a lot of this because they had great size, and then those big men came, the weak side big man came over and contested or just straight up blocked a ton of our shots. And you saw it even times when we maybe should have been able to score over them because they didn't quite get over there in time. They still, you could tell, bothered our guys, and we missed so many of these get around the first guy, get in that weird spot where you kind of want to make a floater or a push shot or a little kiss off the glass, and we'd get to that spot, that 6-7 foot spot, and go to make that. And that freaking long arm, they bothered us a bunch, and some of them were just bad luck too, because they had a couple of those that we contested pretty well that all seemed to bounce in, and it felt like all of ours rimmed out.
Yeah.
And like I said, they weren't high quality shots. I mean, they were, they're not exactly what you want. You want layups or maybe even clean looks. They were hard drives with a guy coming over, like kind of push shots, which you can make, but they made us take a lot of really difficult looks, and almost none of them went in.
Yeah. I mean, there was one point, it was funny, at the end of the game, Stan Van Gundy was saying, like, oh, well, the thing that's wild is that, UConn's had a little bit of trouble this year stopping people from scoring in the lane. And so that's a change. And you were commenting, yeah, well, no kidding. Like, when you don't fear a team shooting three-pointers at all, interior defense becomes really easy. I mean, you and I have played like a decent amount of basketball, and you know how this goes, dude. When you're playing pickup ball with a bunch of guys that you know, and then you look at the team that you're playing against, and you're like, none of those guys scare me to death from the outside. It's about to be a slugfest, because I'm about to pack it in, dude.
Yeah, it's not just the fact that it's much easier to guard on the ball when you can play even just a half a step off a guy.
I'm not saying they're not guarding the three, but you know what it's like when you're guarding someone who is lethal and someone who can shoot a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I am guarding someone that can shoot a little bit, I'm playing off.
Well, and the help defense, like the weak side defense. You saw it a lot when they gave the big guy the ball, and he'd have 5-6 dribbles with no help coming, and it was because we feared their outside shooting on that weak side. If we were to crawl over, that they're going to kick it out or swing it around. And the difference between that and what they were doing to us, where there'd be 3 and 4 guys on the ball if it ever got inside the 3-point line, and that also behooved them packing it in there. I mean, they're already a great rebounding team, and they gave great effort on the rebounds. I did think
our guards need to box out better.
We had a particular. We could have done. Credit to them. Good effort. They pursue the ball. We did not. We stood shoulder to shoulder with a couple of guys and didn't find people's bodies.
I mean, particularly the guards, because their guards got a lot of offensive rebounds.
Yeah.
Where it's one of those things. You got Kamani blocking a dude out. But everyone else is like, oh, good, you're blocking their rebounder out. No, there's all these guys collapsing, and you're not finding a body.
Even guys that didn't look like they had a chance at the ball would come in and sometimes get a finger on it or a hand and slap it. I mean, and on the offensive side for us, we did better in the second half, I think. It felt like we did anyway. But in the first half, there was times where, we'd shoot the ball, and I don't even know where our guys were. There was 5 white jerseys around the ball and nobody even rushing in. And so that part was, I think, why this night was a little bit there's ways I would have preferred to lose, getting out efforted and not boxing out, which, like I said, I think we did a little bit better in the second half. But that first half, they punched us in the face, and it felt like we were a little bit confused and dazed and just lost our fundamentals for a few stretches. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That was a little bit of a bummer, but ultimately, Sweet 16, 3 years in a row, it's hard to win, and that's a good team. And it would not surprise me in the least if that team wins the national championship or is easily in the Final Four.
I'm telling you right now, it's going to be a great national championship. It's going to be Alabama and UConn, and that's going to be a great game. You can mark it down right now. I just said it, so if it happens, just know that I said it. So it's going to be UConn and Alabama, and
I think K-State might have something to say too, though. Those guys are scrappy because I know they just beat Michigan
State,
and
I would have rather played either one of them.
Yeah, me too. In overtime, but Michigan State it's just. They're kind of magical in the tournament, and they're a hard out. And if you watched K-State the last 2 games, They're kind of like they're a little bit like UConn. They got
Smaller though.
they are smaller.
Their
Their
guard.
guards are smaller, but that guy is good, dude. He's small, but he doesn't play small.
Yeah.
He's scrappy. But so I think there's good teams left. I
Yep.
did think that the overall tournament was flatter this year, and there was more parity, really more mediocre sounds just like bad. I don't mean mediocre, but I mean less great teams and more just good and decent teams. But I do think we're getting down and we're filtering down to the final. Like the final 8 are going to be the teams that are the most well-rounded and have a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I think we talked about it last game, so you can't change your mind just because you got your ass kicked in the Sweet 16. Based on how the season was going, you have to say, I mean, dude, a Sweet 16 is a good season. I mean, it's a good season by no matter what. 3 16s in a row is wild. We haven't done anything like that in 30 years. I will say this: you got to, make the phone calls. Musselman. I just want to state this: Musselman's buyout is not nearly enough. This is the main problem that Arkansas has right now. Is it's not even so much his salary. You need to increase his salary. You do. Extend the years. The problem with his with Musselman's contract is the buyout. The buyout's like 2 point something million. That is not anywhere close to enough.
Yeah, I feel like what they're doing though is they know teams are going to come for him in the offseason, and by raising all that, I think they know Musselman's only going to leave for a few really. I mean, he might not leave for any job. I mean, that's what I'd like to think. But being realistic, maybe UCLA because he's a California kid.
Yeah, they're not. That's not open.
I know.
Texas is the only one you're worried about if they do that.
Right, but I'm just saying, like one of these blue blood teams.
Yeah.
And because of that, those teams are going to bring a sack of cash, and you almost don't want to. You almost can't raise it high enough to. You're like negotiating against yourself. You know what I mean?
I don't know, man.
If you raise it up to,
but the way you stop teams from getting your coach is having crazy buyouts. You got to put that in. You got to bake it in the contract. Like, do you know how much it costs? Like right now, he got an extension. So Gates over at Missouri, who had a good year, and they were not very good last year, and he turned them right around. They were good, pretty good this year. They give him an extension. For a team to come steal him, they have to pay Missouri like $17 million. That's what I'm talking about. Like, you need to get some of that action. Mm-hmm. Like, you need to have an amount where a team would have to come in and, like, really, really freaking back up the trucks and unload some cash on you to steal your coach. Anyway, get that done. I'd like to see that buyout go up. I don't need this, like, $2.4 million buyout or whatever, which Texas has, like, sitting in their couch cushions. I don't need that.
I've got $2 million for Musselman.
Bro, I'm telling you, there's people in Texas that got $2.4 million. The athletic director has $2.4 million like in a freaking Ziploc bag in his freezer. Mm-hmm. Like, we can't have that. But that being said, great year. It was up and down, roller coaster, all the hype coming in, injuries. It's a tough year, but ended good.
Winning that Kansas game really did help because even still, like I said, you could imagine having Brazil not get hurt and have
Nick Smith
play
the whole
year and even win 28 games, and you can still perfectly reasonably imagine losing this game right now at this position. You'd be like, what an amazing season. So like, the only reason this season is at all disappointing is because of expectations and because as a fan, it was a relatively frustrating journey because of the offensive struggles. So it wasn't as fun a season as some of the past ones have been.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was more of a slog as just an overall season because of the injuries. But like I said, winning that game really did, and getting to the Sweet 16 really did make it. I mean, what you would just say is a good season. I mean,
yeah. Well, one of the things is that if you're changing things, if Brazil doesn't get hurt and Nick Smith doesn't get hurt, and they have both of them the whole year, and Nick Smith maybe has progressed and he can take better angles on defense, and so he can get more minutes or whatever. And obviously Brazil helps you. I think that what it does is it keeps you from being in an 8-9 game to start and having to play Kansas in the second round, having to play UConn in the Sweet 16. You look at some of the other teams' pathways, and that's the thing about the regular season. Once you get to a certain level and you're very, very good, these teams are fighting for seeding for a reason, and they're playing for seeding for a reason because it's hard in the tournament if you end up in that position. It's a lot better to be in that 3 seed. It's a lot better.
Maybe. I mean, I know what you mean, but it's almost. I actually agree with one thing the announcer said tonight, which was, it's almost more about matchups.
Dude, it is. But like UConn played. I don't know who first game. Then St. Mary's, who they blew out, and then us.
I know, but then Purdue lost in the first round.
And, that's because they're in the Big Ten, and the Big Ten sucks.
But then look, I mean, like I said, Kansas gets a number 1 seed.
Yeah.
Loses to an 8 seed.
That's because we're awesome.
It's not really. we're clearly not, and we're good at times, and we're very have flaws. I'm just saying
it's better to have a higher seed. The path was dude. If we won this game, it was going to be ridiculous. Like, obviously the path gets hard eventually, no matter what. Like in the tournament, but what I'm saying is like it's. You have an easier front end of the journey potentially. Anyway, historically, the data bears this out. Anyway, and that's part of it is like, hey, we got in the tournament, it was great. I don't think anyone at the beginning of the season was like, man, if we can just lock down that 8-9 game. That wasn't that's not the season you were thinking about. Now, it turned out good because you won some games in the tournament. You upset the number 1 seed, so it's a great season, but the fact that you were an 8 seed and you're playing an 8-9 game speaks to the roller coaster that the regular season was, because it's not where you expected that season to take you.
Yeah, I agree. So ultimately, good season. Little bit of a struggle as far as like emotionally as a Hogs fan, but still
wouldn't trade Muss for. I don't think
better than.
I'll keep Muss over everyone else.
Better than the last 20 years of being an Arkansas fan.
Dude.
So
that's true, and I think we will come back. The thing about this team is that there's going to be a lot of turnover on this roster.
Maybe the whole team.
Well, I don't think the whole team's Devo. I think Devo's coming back. I think we're going to have Devo. Maybe nobody else. I think Pinion will probably stick around. I don't know. But there's going to be a lot of turnover, and so Jake's going to have a lot of names to get used to saying.
I know.
So it's going to be terrible for him. But, we got 2 freshmen, and that's it. And Muss said he's not – that's it. That was the end of that. So Bayfall and Layden Blocker, so they're coming in. So you got them. And Muss is right now as we're recording this, Muss is on the phone with somebody about somebody in some place about bringing somebody here that's probably long and can't shoot. But
the transfer portal probably plays good defense, though.
Probably plays good defense. And so when some of that stuff starts to take shape, I think we will do sort of we'll do 2 podcasts, I think, minimum. Let's see if we can commit to 2 between now and the first basketball game of next year. One, when we get the team figured out, so when all this the transfer portal stuff stops and we have the team figured out, we can maybe do a little research and talk about what the roster makeup looks like, see who left, see who stayed, talk about that stuff. And then before the season starts in the fall, we'll do a season preview kind of and go through that. So.
Yeah, and we've talked in the past about maybe trying to do a football thing during the football season. Not as many games, and we don't know as much about football, but we're huge fans, obviously. So it might be more just like a casual friends having conversation podcast, not so much. And we might say a lot of really stupid stuff that somebody that knows football would be like, "You idiots don't know what you're talking about."
Facts.
But anyway, and we got, I know that was really exciting against Kansas, and we got some new subscribers and a lot of views. So if you feel interested in listening to us talk about the recruits and stuff, hit those notification bells and stuff. And
yeah, the audience grew by, I'm sure if you look at the subscriber list, you're like, it's not oh, that's not a ton of subscribers, but this is a narrow demographic. It's people that are into Arkansas basketball enough to watch a YouTube show about recapping games.
And it's not on anything else. So
it's not.
And like I said, if you hit the notifications and stuff, it's just we'll pop up every once in a while. But we're not gonna
but thanks for you guys that wrote out the season with us and commented and told friends and stuff. That's really cool, and we're gonna keep doing it. We'll be back after we get a team together and we can talk about that team, and then we'll come back and preview the regular season as well in the fall. So
thanks, guys. Good season.
See ya.